Welcome back to Old Coin Adventures. If you have old US coins sitting in a drawer, a collection, or a coin jar, you may want to pay special attention to these too, because the coins we're looking at today are not the kind you should casually overlook. One is a classic buffalo nickel, a coin with a powerful place in American coin history, a design collectors still recognize instantly, and a reputation that makes certain examples especially desirable. The other is a Washington quarter. It may look familiar, but some examples of this particular issue have become highly interesting to collectors. And here's why you should listen carefully. You might already have one of these coins without realizing how important it could be. Maybe it's been sitting in your collection for years. Maybe you found it in an old coin jar. Or maybe you received it as ordinary change and never thought twice about it. Today, we're going to take a much closer look at both coins and explain why collectors pay attention to them. And by the end of this video, you'll know how these coins can become so valuable, what they're actually worth, what the last documented auction sales reveal, where you can sell one if you have it, and how to avoid getting cheated by someone who knows less, or simply offers you far less than the coin deserves. So don't leave this video halfway through, because you may discover that one of these coins has been sitting much closer to you than you ever expected. And the quarter we're talking about today is the 1968 Washington quarter. Let's begin with the story behind the 1968 Washington quarter. This quarter comes from an important period in American coinage, when the United States Mint was making major changes to the nation's circulating coins. By 1968, the Washington quarter had already been in production for decades. But this was not an ordinary year for American coinage. The country was dealing with a serious shortage of coins, and the mint was producing enormous quantities to keep everyday commerce moving. The 1968 quarter was struck at the Denver Mint, and more than 101 million examples were produced. That is a huge number. So finding a 1968 quarter doesn't automatically mean you found a rare coin. But here's where the story changes. Collectors don't always search for coins simply because they're old. They search for coins that are different. A rare error, a strong die variety, an unusual strike, or an exceptionally preserved example can make an ordinary-looking quarter much more interesting. So what should you actually look for? Start with Washington's portrait. Examine the date and the lettering. Look at the fields around the design and check for unusual doubling, raised features, missing details, or anything that doesn't appear normal. But be careful. A scratch isn't automatically an error. A dent isn't automatically an error. And damage that happened after the quarter left the mint doesn't have the same significance as a genuine mint-made error. Now turn the quarter over. Study the eagle. Look at the lettering. Examine the rim. Then look across the entire reverse for anything unusual in the way the coin was struck. A major off-center strike, a broad strike, a clipped planchet, or a genuine die-related error can make a coin much more interesting to collectors. But the size and clarity of the error matter. A dramatic mint error is usually much more interesting than a tiny imperfection that can barely be seen. And there's another category you shouldn't ignore. Condition. A circulated 1968 quarter can show scratches, contact marks, wear, and dull surfaces. That's normal. But an exceptionally preserved example is a completely different story. When a coin remains sharp, clean, and nearly untouched after more than 50 years, collectors start paying much closer attention. That's why professional grading can become important. A high grade can separate a common-looking coin from an exceptional example. And here's something that makes the 1968 quarter especially interesting. The coin itself may be common, but the very best examples can be surprisingly difficult to find. That difference is what creates condition rarity. Now let's talk about the money. PCGS records an auction result of $8,812.50 for a 1968 Washington quarter graded MS68. That's a remarkable price for a quarter. But don't make the mistake of thinking every 1968 quarter is worth thousands of dollars. Most circulated examples are not. That auction result represents an exceptionally high-grade coin. And that's an important lesson in coin collecting. The date alone doesn't determine the value. The mint mark alone doesn't determine the value. The individual condition, strike, variety, and any genuine mint-made error all matter. So if you have a 1968 D quarter, don't rush to sell it just because you've heard about a big auction result. First, determine exactly what you have. If it appears to be an ordinary circulated quarter, a local coin dealer may be the easiest place to sell it. But if you believe you've found a high-grade example or a genuine mint error, you have better options. You can seek an opinion from a reputable coin dealer. You can have the coin professionally authenticated and graded. Or, for a truly exceptional example, you can consider an established auction house where serious collectors can compete for it. And here's where you need to protect yourself. Never let a buyer convince you that you have to sell immediately. This buffalo nickel may look like a coin that has already lost its story. The date is almost completely worn away. Years of circulation have taken their toll. The surface has become heavily worn, and at first glance, you might think there's nothing special left to discover. But that's exactly why this coin deserves a closer investigation. Because when a buffalo nickel has a missing or nearly invisible date, you can't immediately tell whether you're looking at an ordinary worn coin, or a coin whose true identity is hiding behind years of wear. And buffalo nickels are not ordinary coins when it comes to American coin collecting. Collectors have spent decades searching for specific dates, mint marks, rare varieties, and famous errors. Some buffalo nickels are highly desirable because of the date, some because of the mint mark, and some because of a tiny variety that most people would never notice. Now look at this one. The date may be difficult to read, but that doesn't mean the coin should automatically be dismissed. There may still be clues left on the surface. The position of the design, the surviving details around the date area, the shape and condition of the buffalo, the location of the mint mark, if one is present, and even the overall appearance of the coin can help us understand what we're dealing with. This is where coin hunting becomes more than simply looking for an old coin. It's about putting the clues together, because sometimes the most important information isn't immediately visible. And with a heavily worn buffalo nickel, identifying the coin correctly can be the first challenge. If you can determine the date or narrow down the possibilities, you may be able to discover whether the coin belongs to a more interesting issue. But there's another important point. A missing date does not automatically make a buffalo nickel rare. Heavy wear can remove the date from millions of coins. So we need to be careful. We don't want to call a coin rare just because it looks old or heavily worn. We want to find the evidence. That's what makes this particular buffalo nickel interesting. Instead of throwing it away because the date has disappeared, we're going to investigate what is still visible. We're going to look at the details that survived decades of circulation and see whether those details can tell us something important about this coin. Because imagine finding out that the coin you've almost ignored has a characteristic worth researching. That possibility alone makes it worth taking a second look. And if you're searching through an old collection, a coin jar, or a group of inherited coins, this is exactly the kind of buffalo nickel you shouldn't dismiss too quickly. The date may be difficult to see, but the coin hasn't necessarily lost all of its clues. Sometimes, the smallest remaining detail can help unlock the entire identity of a coin. And that's what we're going to find out. Is this simply a heavily worn buffalo nickel with no significant collector premium? Or could there be something much more interesting hiding underneath all those years of wear? By the end of our investigation, we'll know what clues matter, what could make a buffalo nickel like this worth keeping, and what you should do before deciding whether it's worth selling. Because the date may have faded, the surface may be worn,